Is it the perfect time for a Dungeons & Dragons MMO? That's what we're talking about in this video. Before we dive into that though, for those of you who like MMORPGs, but maybe you're not familiar with Dungeons & Dragons, then let me give you a quick rundown. Dungeons & Dragons, it's a tabletop RPG, aka role-playing game. It's where you make a character in a setting or a world where a dungeon master is deciding what happens behind the scenes, what monsters you fight, what traps are there, and all of those things while you role-play your character, get into combat, and roll dice to determine success or failure in a lot of occasions. Now that you have a basic understanding of what Dungeons & Dragons is, let's talk about why right now is the best time for there to be a new Dungeons & Dragons MMO. First of all, there have been other D&D MMOs. Dungeons & Dragons Online, aka DDO, came out about 20 years ago. I mean, it came out in 2006, so not quite 20 years, but it's a pretty old game, and it's hard to get people to buy into it given how dated it looks. Not to mention, it became free to play, but with everything behind paywall. So if you're playing that and you want to actually experience gameplay, you're gonna have to shill over some cash pretty often. There's also Neverwinter, which came out a bit later. However, it's still a bit dated and it doesn't quite hold up to what we expect in a full-fledged D&D game. So with that being said, now is the best time for a lot of reasons. One being, it has had massive success in the mainstream culture. While Dungeons & Dragons was once something that only nerds played and it was done in basements and it was always the not cool kids, now with the recent success of Stranger Things, where it's based on some D&D aspects, we've seen Baldur's Gate 3 come out and just blow people away based on the 5th edition Dungeons & Dragons, and of course we've seen the new Dungeons & Dragons movie, as well as Critical Role and Vox Machina making a huge splash in the water over the last several years. When you combine all of these things and how much hype and knowledge there is around Dungeons & Dragons right now, it just makes sense that you could capitalize on that and bring that world to so many more gamers in the form of an MMORPG. It's not just the hype at the moment though, it's not just the mainstream culture, it is the depth and lore and variety that Dungeons & Dragons brings. Whether it be class designs and how many options you have, the variety of monsters and mobs that you can get into engagements with, the worlds and maps that are already out there and built and ready to go, with heroes and gods and stories ripe for the taking. There is so much in Dungeons & Dragons that they could build an MMORPG around and give so much for years to come. D&D is a massive IP. It's arguably bigger than most other IPs that games are built around, and it has fans of all ages. The new age, the young, the people just experiencing it through Stranger Things or through Baldur's Gate, all the way up to the people who have been playing tabletop for 30, 40, or 50 years. They can all come together in this one place and enjoy Dungeons & Dragons in a new and unique way in a modern day MMORPG with all that the current technology has to offer. And despite there being lots of options currently in the MMO genre, there's a need for something new, refreshing, and based on something that we can really get behind. Yes, there's still World of Warcraft dominating the space along with Lost Ark, Final Fantasy, New World, and plenty of others that have been around for years like Guild Wars 2, DDO, Neverwinter, and so many more. But right now, people are still longing for a new MMO with new experiences in places that maybe they're familiar with, maybe they're not, based on something that they love. And I think Dungeons & Dragons can fill that, and with all the hype and what's going on in the current market of MMOs, I think now would be a great time for a Dungeons & Dragons MMO. But of course, that's just my thoughts. I want to know yours down in the comments below. Let me know. Do you think now is a great time for there to be a Dungeons & Dragons MMO? Let me know if you feel one way or the other. And of course, let me know what you would love to see in that game as well, because there's just so many choices. And for more D&D, RPG, MMO content, make sure to subscribe here at Level Up.